Story 4. I viewed the property of a man who murdered his previous tenant. When I finished uni, I moved back home until I found a job. As soon as I could afford to, I set up a profile on the website Spareroom. I was contacted by James, who had a room to rent on the outskirts of the town I worked in. It sounded good, but he wanted to talk on the phone before inviting me to view it. We had a chat one evening, and it turned out we had some things in common. We both enjoyed fitness, particularly swimming, and were movie buffs. By the end of the call, it had felt like chatting to an old friend, and I was looking forward to meeting him. James didn't specify his age, but I assumed he was in his 20s like me. When I went to view the property, he actually came out of the house next door to greet me. When he introduced himself as James, I was pretty shocked. He was at least 50, dressed quite conservatively, and looked like he was wearing a hairpiece. If he'd told me on the phone that he was in his early 20s, I wouldn't have questioned it. I went ahead with the viewing, but I'd already decided I didn't want to rent a room from him. I wanted to live with people who were a similar age to me. I was also put off by the house decor, which looked like it hadn't changed since the 80s. When I viewed the bedroom, it looked like it was occupied by a young person. There were several pairs of trainers and a games console. James said that the previous tenant, Mark, was moving to London for work. Coincidentally, my name is Mark, too. James invited me to sit in the living room after the house tour. I didn't want to be rude, so I did. He explained that he cared for his elderly mother, who lived next door. Then he started complimenting my style, saying I looked cool. He proceeded to put his hand on my leg, which made me feel very uncomfortable. When he asked if I was interested in the room, I said I had some other properties to view but would be in touch. I then made my excuses to leave. Everything about him screamed red flag. I just wanted to get out of that house. As soon as I was back in my car, I called my mum to tell her how freaked out I was, and I absolutely would not be living there. James texted me a few days later to ask if I'd thought any more about moving in. I lied and said I'd found somewhere closer to town. I did eventually find something with some other young professionals, which turned out to be great. Some months later, our town was shocked by the news that a man's body had been found in the fields on the outskirts. He was later identified as Mark. I didn't think much of that until I saw a murder suspect was his landlord, James, the same James whose house I viewed. I saw him on the news and got instant chills. He was later convicted of Mark's murder. Story 5. I jumped in front of my car. This happened a couple weeks ago. So I was heading home from my friend's house one night, around 11:30 p.m. My friend lives about 25 minutes from me, and the fastest way to get home is if I take back roads. I live in a small rural town. Anyways, I'm driving home with one other car about 4 car lengths in front of me. I'm about 5 minutes from my house when I see the car's taillights suddenly brake, then the car speeds off and turns off a road to where I couldn't see it anymore. I didn't think too much of it. Maybe a raccoon ran out in front of them and they didn't want to hit it. As I get to the part of the road where that car slammed on their brakes, a man, a big man, probably 6+ feet tall in a black hoodie, jumps in front of my car flailing his arms and yelling at me. I swerve to the right to not hit him and look in my rear view and he's gone. This road had houses, but where this man was there were none, no streetlight, no broken-down car. I raced home and called my husband, who was about 2.5 hours away at an event and wouldn't be home till after midnight. I told him what happened and how he just disappeared, and I was terrified to get out of my car to walk into our house. He stayed on the phone with me till I got inside and immediately headed home. There's been a lot of weird break-ins around my area lately too, and people trying to steal cars. I can't even imagine what would have happened if I stopped my car. Not that I would ever. I've seen too many true crime docs. I avoid taking that way home now, and if I do that's all I think about. Story 6. Guy sitting on my front porch. I was watching TV when I heard a few coughs outside. Our walls are thin, so I heard them loud. I thought at first it was the guys doing work on a unit across from me. It bothers me, but they park outside my unit. I don't say anything though, since eventually they'll be done and gone. But I checked with my blinds, and it wasn't. It was just some dude sitting in my chair out front, which is something weird even for the workers. So I went out of my doorway and asked, "Can I help you?" He said, "Oh, I'm not doing anything. I'm just smoking." He pointed to a running car, which was his. "I'm baffled. Why would anyone ever smoke outside their car and park in someone's driveway to do it? Use the side of the road, or use a parking lot, or literally anywhere else." So I said, "This is my house. Can you leave?" He again reiterated he's not doing anything, and he'll leave if I want, so I say yes. He gets in his car and goes. But it is obviously someone's house. He even pretended to be surprised about that after I walked out of it to question him. It couldn't be anything else but a house. It even has our last name on a plaque in the window. Can't imagine any scenario where someone would sit in someone's chair on their porch smoking if he wasn't planning something uncouth. I just think that's not normal behavior. I wrote his license plate down just in case. Story 7. Train creep. I've kept this one inside for nearly 15 years now. Finding the right platform to relieve a burden is nice. When I was 15, I went to a show in Liverpool, UK with a friend. My friend told me he was staying at a friend's house, so I boarded the 25-minute train home alone. This was the last train home. At around 23:30, I found a seat and stared out of the window as the city lights faded into peripheral twinkles. Some 5 minutes in, my trance was broken by the soft croak of an older guy, maybe 50, with dusty blonde hair and aviator-framed glasses. "Hello, young man. Are you okay? You look lonely?" Shocked and confused, I nodded. "I'm okay, thanks." "The name's Dean. Do you like smoking weed and drinking beers? I've got some at my house. Are you stopping at Crew? You could pop in." "No, I'm getting off at Runcorn," I mistakenly replied, cringing internally. I excused myself to use the bathroom. As I made my way hastily across the carriage, the twinkling city lights now replaced by dank fields and semi-urban decay, I peeked back, noticing the man playing with what seemed to be a needle. I speed up to the bathroom and locked the door. It was only 10 more minutes until my stop. The next stop is Runcorn. I don't think a digitized train announcement has ever sounded so heavenly. I threw the door open and bolted to the exit. As my feet touched the station floor, I felt a firm grip on my shoulder. Looking back in fear and trying to shake off the grip, I acted fast, and instinctively I shouted, "Dad!" at a completely empty on the other side of the gate. The now stumbling backwards, Dean let out a "oh fuck" under his breath and ran to the other side of the train, while I ran through the gate, sprinted all the way home, and told my parents, who told the police. We never heard anything.